All right, so we're going to continue in this series, EIKON. We've been in for a little bit, Image of the Invisible. This is part 11. It's called How You See Anything is How You See Everything. Let's just stop there. What does that mean? What's your first reaction to this? Your perspective? Yeah, so your perspective kind of flavors everything. Well, this is true, isn't it? Isn't it nice when the serotonin levels are all regulated all right and you got a good night's sleep and you got money in the bank account, love in your heart, and bluebird on your shoulder? Anything, almost anything can come along. And rather than, oh, God, why? There's this kind of like, all right, how do we work with this? And like you say, on the other side of that is when all those things are out of whack or seemingly not present, it becomes pretty difficult to like choose to be grateful, even for the little beautiful things, you know. Yes. Oh, that's kind of you. Yeah, so it's like our yeah, yeah. Our energy is contagious, you know, and so oftentimes we sort of spread around whatever it is that we're feeling. There's no, what were those masks you ever to wear for a while? There was that one that actually works. I can't, it's some letters, B26 or something. Surgical mask. They don't have one of those for moods yet, I don't think. That'd be awesome. I remember one time driving home from work and I was all with anxiety, you know. I don't know where yours is, but mine's like this like little column of energy right in here, and it like tries to pull. It's like a black hole. And it was all on me, and I couldn't get rid of it. And I was like getting closer to the house, and I was like, I don't want to bring this in there, but there it was. And so I just opted to. I'm just not going to say anything. And Jess was reading a book, and I like plopped down next to her. She was reading the book, and I didn't say anything. I just sat there, and she's like, after like 2 minutes, she's like, whatever this energy is with you, you're going to have to like go outside and take care of that. And I was like, how'd you know? Yeah. Music does help. Yeah. Music helps a lot more than information, I've found.
I always say we're all a little broken, and sometimes we bleed out on each other.
Mm.
And I think when someone's not being their best, like to remember they have brokenness as well. And we don't need to break more. We just need to kind of stand by while they heal or seal back up.
Mm.
That sounds sad, but
Mm.
I enjoy that. Thank you for sharing.
Mm.
And we have to be gentle because we're all, we have to be gentle with each other because of our brokenness.
Mm.
Just pay attention to it. All of us have the opportunity to do that ourselves. And that's where it starts. Jesus shows us.
So you're saying kind of when somebody's mood as a result of, you know, whatever's going on, trauma, brokenness, whatever you want to call it, stress, whenever this is sort of bleeding out on you, I think what you're saying is to resist the urge to rush in with frustration, like quit that bleeding, you're making a mess of my living room, or sometimes we have to even watch the tendency to rush in with solutions, you know, or to try to fix it. Sometimes we're not meant to be the ambulance driver. Let him die. Okay. This is John 3:3. Jesus said, truly I tell you. Actually said it twice, so he must really mean it. Unless a person is born again, they can't see They don't see the kingdom. Here's Henry David Thoreau. He said, the question is not what you look at, but what you see. What's the difference there? Looking and seeing are the words that he's choosing. What's the difference? The depth. Yeah. Like looking at something from the land, like what I say, boots on the ground, not just flying overhead. That's good.
You could change those words to hear and perceive. Like you're delivering 100 individual sermons right now. We're all taking to him in different ways. Receiving the message that comes to us.
That's so good, man. Thank you. Yeah, you could change those words, look and see, to hear and perceive. And he said, I'm delivering 100 different sermons right now at the same time. I know you're marveling at my proficiency. And that's just because all these words are just filtering through our own set of, usness, our perspective. And this has happened more times than I can count, where somebody said, it'll be like, because you need these little ego boosts or you can't make it as a Leo who's a pastor. Things like, oh man, what you said about, and then they'll say something I didn't say, like helped me so much. And it's kind of an awesome feature. 2 Corinthians 4, this is a paraphrase. If salvation seems obscure to anyone, it isn't because the message is complicated or intentionally hidden. It's only a divided attention that confuses any of us. Busyness is the flimsy veil of the god of darkness. The eyes dart to and fro, leading our awareness into a kind of chosen blindness. But as we gaze into the day-spring brightness of Christ, we come to see the image of God and the truth of things. That God has filled our lives with light, and all is bright and beautiful. And we carry this light with us everywhere we go, in this most inauspicious container, these fragile jars of clay, these temporary human frames. Our impermanence, a monument to the eternality of God. The divided awareness. A while ago, I was invited to this inter-religious gathering in the basement of one of those historic churches downtown. And it was all these pastors and imams and nuns and swamis and rabbis. The reason that some organization, some benevolent organization had gathered all these faith leaders, as it was called, because the news, all over the Jacksonville, we got ourselves in the news again. Do you guys have concerned relatives who aren't from around here? They're always telling you what's on the news in Jacksonville. But the news at this moment had been the FBI had thwarted some plot by somebody or other to blow up or do something to a mosque here in town. And this organization had called all these faith leaders together to discuss what they saw as the motive at the root of hatred, they called it. Something they called othering, which is what? How would you describe that human impulse? Survival instincts. Fear. Compartmentalization. Yeah. What's it? Justifying your actions. Just creating your own separation. Dehumanizing. nervous system response. Yeah. Yeah, and a whole mess of projection, it's kind of something we keep talking about, is that what we're unaware of in ourselves or what we're afraid about in our own character. It's quite a challenge to really turn and look at these things. It's not a very comfortable thing to do, to allow ourselves to face ourselves with the Spirit of God, in the Spirit of God, to really look and see what it is that's happening in here is it's inherently uncomfortable. And an easier automatic solution seems to be to export all of these qualities out onto someone out here, over there, and then all this other stuff that was just described can begin to happen. And it's honest, I think it's probably the things that we feel that we deserve. And yeah, scapegoat each other. At some point in this meeting, a rabbi stood up and he said something that's stayed with me since then. He said something like this: "B'Tselem Elohim." He started in Hebrew, so I paid attention. He said, "B'Tselem Elohim" means created in the image of God, and B'Tselem Elohim must be the basis of all thought and action between human beings. It's the starting point. Image and likeness. Image and likeness. And that's a pretty useful filter. If you prefer more, a negative slant, I can offer one. And that's that the word Satan in the scriptures is not a name, it's a title. It means the accuser, accusation, to render accusation. And so these two sort of filters being in place can really help clarify our thoughts, actions, language that we take towards one another if we slow down. And one thing I've sort of been enjoying reading the Gospels lately is I think in the way that Christ conducted himself, not just his one-to-one interactions with people, but just in the sort of community that he gathered around himself. He seems to offer another method or mode for healing this othering impulse that we all carry. When I look at how, the friends he brought together, it seems that Jesus seemed to favor the kind of community that he just gathered together as many combustible elements as he could find, and then he mixed them all together in a container that couldn't hold. If you filter through the language of the kinds of people that were hanging out, it's like, if you've been in church, you've heard all this before, but I wonder if you can hear it. He's got the word zealot we hear, that just means terrorist. Like, that's a religious terrorist alongside, faithful, observing, or maybe moderate folks. You got tax collectors who were really just like cheats and scoundrels. Anyway, you guys know Jesus is up to you. And I think what's inherently instructive there is we have to trust that there's some kind of divine alchemy that's occurring. When the places where I'm stubborn and stuck are explosively reacting with the places where you are stubborn and stuck. If we're not trusting in some kind of divine alchemy, some sort of purification process that's happening through this frustration that we're feeling with each other, then it would probably be better off to part ways, which is the easiest thing to do, and to silo down into places and people and partners who just to keep looking until we finally find the person who thinks exactly like us. There must be another me out there somewhere, and if I can find them, I think when I try to think of like a vision statement or a mission statement or something we can really kind of like point towards here as a community, like what it is that we're doing here. This whole thing's just been an experiment, like it still is. And it isn't that there's no clarity or no idea on what it is that we're trying to do and where it is that we think we're going and where it is that we find ourselves. Let me say it this way. I've been like in church for a long time, and I've always appreciated about Beach's Vineyard. I've been hanging around this place for a really long time. And what I always appreciated upon first encountering this community was I really felt like it was very different from the church I grew up in. It kind of did seem like you were allowed to come as you are. As they say, you could wear blue jeans, board shorts, anything. Express yourself. And I found that that there genuinely was more acceptance, tolerance, less judgment on sort of where folks seem to find themselves along some like moral continuum. It just didn't seem as heavy as the church I grew up in. And I really liked that. That was appealing. And the further I got in, the more situations presented themselves to me where I began to see that though we may not be drawing hard lines along sort of these like moral ideas, there was definitely some felt discomfort if anybody dared venture to express a spiritual experience they'd had that was not congruent with basically like mainline evangelical Christianity. And I could feel the discomfort. I could feel it in me, and I could feel it in the room, and of course this could certainly be felt in whoever the person was that dared to venture this opinion. And so that kind of was troubling to me. And the more I thought about it, the more tell me if I'm right about this. This is just a little theory I have. I feel like a message that's communicated in almost any group that you can ever find and be a part of is that we want you to belong, and in order for you to belong, there are a couple of things that we'll expect. There's some behavioral things here, there's some belief stuff, there's just some practical things for us to kind of work together efficiently, and that makes sense. But if we're meant to change ourselves, I don't think we're supposed to do this, but if we're meant to change ourselves to be a part of a group, I think working on our behaviors is actually a lot easier than working on our beliefs. Can you control what you believe? Like if the word make-believe? It seems to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, sincerely, it seems to me that our beliefs exist along some kind of a continuum, and what once seems solid and immovable, life brings these circumstances, and what happens is, as we begin to see, it shifts and softens the things that we used to believe. And as a result, for most of us, if we're growing, the kind of things that I believe today are very different from the things that I believed 10 years ago, and I'm grateful for that. But I didn't choose to make it happen. It kind of happened to me. That's my experience. Have you successfully altered how you believe? If so, how'd you do it? Yeah, Jung says, until we make the unconscious conscious, it will direct our lives and we'll call it fate. What brings what's unconscious to consciousness? Awareness. Presence. Sitting still for long enough for the glitter in the jar to settle to the bottom to see what's actually in here. So maybe part of the nature of this whole like Beaches Vineyard experiment to date has been, well, you guys kind of make each other uncomfortable sometimes. I don't know if you've noticed that, It's like there's a lot of people that find their way in here who have said to me, I've heard this enough, that it is a recognizable pattern, and though it is not the entire population, there are many folks who have said, I'd never thought I'd be sitting inside of a church building. Like, this is the last place on earth I thought I'd be hanging out on a Sunday morning. Or, because of the experiences that I had in church when I was younger, I made a vow that I would never. One guy, one of my favorite things, this dude who's a regular at Zapcat told me one time, he'd been sending people to church here, but he'd never been into, he stays in the lobby, but not in here. And, which is great. That's the point. It's not a Christian cafe that we're running to secretly funnel people into our salvation program. Once we get you hooked on the espresso, get you all zipped up and... What you're looking for is where you're looking from. This guy said to me, look, man, I really love what's going on around here. I got your back. I was like, yeah, man, you too. And he's like, I just want to be clear, like, I will never go to church, like, never. Just never, ever. But if I were going to church, it'd probably be here. And I thought, can you put that on our Yelp review or something? Because I feel like it makes me so happy. And here's the thing. So everybody's coming in and hopefully discovering that you're allowed to be yourself here truly. And to express what it is that you sense to be true about a thing that we can't possibly understand or accurately name or describe. God. And hopefully collectively we're learning that like truly listening and understanding the perspective of another, even if it's like we just don't agree at all, like instead of working on correcting where the other person is coming from, working on what's being stirred up inside of us till we can choose to just keep listening, seeking to understand. It's not the same thing as being in agreement, Like, understanding and agreement aren't the same thing. And when we're humble enough to work with these things that are so deeply felt that we feel we're doing a deep injustice to not express them, like right now. But when we choose to allow, to acknowledge that there's some process at work in all of us, and it's a divine alchemy, and it's the desire of God is to see us free even of our best ideas about God. There's no way to experience like truly what it is to be held until we let go. We have to let go. And what all of that, oh yeah, so like, I think we have honored the sort of bravery for folks who have never felt at home in a Christian church to feel at home in a Christian church, like in the South, in Jacksonville, Florida, of all places, like. And then, of course, the folks that are coming in and figure out that they are safe here and can express, well, then they start talking about chakras, Atmans. All the Christianity in us goes, oh, God, no. Like somebody, and we're all uncomfortable, maybe, from time to time. And we're meant to be, like... And it's beautiful. Because behind all the ideas and the judgments and the things I ought to say and the things I ought to do and the things you ought to say and the things you ought to do is this experience of seeing, when we look long enough at anyone or anything, what we begin to see is the image and likeness of God. The beginning of creation, the start of it all, before all these ideas of it being messed up and in need of repair. There's this untouchable, untaintable, irrevocable, unexplainable aspect of being deposited in each of us, the truth of who we are, a mystery too deep to express, that can be seen in the eyes of another, what Jesus called the window to the soul. And generally speaking, it's only the messy experiments that explode and blow up all of so many things that we held dear and figured we couldn't live without. It's only the explosions when it falls apart, when it didn't work, or when we choose to hang in there even though we're having a difficult time. We keep coming back. We keep coming home. We learn to rest. This neutral place, here and now, to look out those windows. St. Paul wrote, "The basic reality of God is plain enough. Open your eyes and there it is." By taking a long and thoughtful look at what God has created, people have always been able to see what their eyes might otherwise miss. The mystery of God's divine being, hidden in plain sight. I'm going to read this really, really old poem to conclude, and then this dude named Saint Simeon, the new theologian who lived 1,000 years ago, wrote this. He said, "We awaken in Christ's body as Christ awakens in our bodies. And my poor hand is Christ. He enters my foot and is infinitely me. I move my hand, and wonderfully my hand becomes Christ, becomes all of him. For God is indivisibly whole, seamless in his godhood. I move my foot, and at once he appears like a flash of lightning. Do my words seem blasphemous? Then open your heart to him. Let yourself receive the one who is opening to you so deeply. For if we genuinely love him, we wake up inside Christ's body, where all of our body, all over it, every most hidden part of it, is realized in joy as him. And he makes us utterly real. And everything that's hurt, everything that seemed to us harsh, shameful, maimed, ugly, irreparably damaged, is in him transformed and recognized as whole, as lovely, and radiant in his light. We awaken as the beloved in every last part of our body. Just a couple minutes still. Communion elements are available right behind me. So if you'd like to come up and receive communion, now would be a good time for that. We'll take just a couple minutes to reflect, and I'll let us know when it's 11:30. But you're now free to move about the cabin.